Jules, welcome back to the Personal Injury Law Show. Because of the hot topic of this cosmetic, aesthetic surgery and plastic surgery, we're not going to do the mail bag this week. And it's very rare that you get a surgeon like Dr. Callis giving us access to his rooms and surgery, Alice.
That's right.
So I think it's important that we keep on this topic and just look at the legislation and talk about one or two of the cases. What's the main piece of legislation dealing with these surgeons these days?
Well, the one that I'll be mentioning is the Health Practitioner Regulation National Law Act, which governs the advertising for cosmetic surgery and more health services. And they've made a reform recently where health services can't advertise in a false or misleading way. They can't offer inducements. Can't offer gifts. Also, they can't create unreasonable expectations. And also, they've got to be very careful with these before and after pictures, which, is a way of, I suppose, advertising your product. So it opens up a raft of discussion about it, and I think it's really interesting.
But Alice, one of the things they've excluded and they've not permitted is testimonials. If I was going to go in and get a liposuction done, or any of those, I'd like to speak to one of the former patients.
That's right, Tony. This particular amendment really strikes me because a lot of our clients, in fact, say the first thing we asked the doctor was, could we speak to someone who'd had what they called successful plastic surgery before? And I think, the legislation's really clamping down on this business. And I know for sure if I was having a scar revised or something like that, I'd want to see a before and after picture, because then you have an idea of what you're getting for your money, and you are sinking a lot of money into this.
More importantly, Alice, I'd like to be speaking to one of the patients.
Yeah, that's right. I would certainly want to know what it was all about, but I think that this really does limit it, although if you have a look at some of the case law, you can see why.
But it's the power of advertising. I sort of disagree because, you can easily... perception is a huge thing in the marketplace, and, you might not have the adequate qualifications, but then your advertising is so great that, you're well over your patients. I think that's
well, Lucia, I don't think you can really attack someone for being entrepreneurial.
No, I don't, but when we talk about the body and surgery, I think that there's a fine line, Tony.
OK, let me say this to you, Lucia. You're concerned about someone going out there saying, come to us because this is what we can do for you. Well, why don't the plastic surgeons do that? They don't want to spend the money.
Well, they really don't need to, because the fact is there's not many of them around.
Word of mouth.
And that's why I think it comes down onto patients and viewers who are going to decide on surgery, is that you've got to ask the proper questions of your surgeon. What are your qualifications? What are the facilities like? What am I undertaking? I think it falls on the patients, to be honest.
A lot does fall on the patient.
Alice, what impressed me the most about Dr. Callis's rooms, apart from the fact that he looked very, very skilled at what he does, is the cleanliness of his clinic.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. I agree. Definitely from the video that we saw, his clinic was spick and span. But I think that's also really important because we're talking about a sterile environment and we're talking about surgery. It might just be day surgery and aftercare. And the risk of infection is so high in these cases. You need spotless rooms. You don't really have another option.
And in fact, he also said he'd prefer to do surgery in his clinic as opposed to a public hospital so as to avoid golden staph.
He's got total control over it, and he seems very meticulous in what he does. So, look, I'd definitely go there if I needed some surgery.
Well, you're looking at Botox already. Let's get on to one of the cases. Yes. There's an interesting case of Benkovic and Dr. Tan. This happened in 1991. Who's going to give me the facts?
Tony, this is a very interesting case. This is a case about Mrs. Benkovic who consulted Dr. Tan in or about the mid-90s, I think. Her son had in 1991 had some plastic surgery to revise a scar. She'd gone back to the doctor because she was interested in a facelift. And the doctor, surprisingly, in my view, told her that he would make her look 20 years younger, that she would be a different person, and that he'd basically slow down her ageing process.
That is dangerous nonsense. Telling someone they're going to be 20 years younger, especially when you're talking about people that are hitting their 50s and 60s and you can be, 30 again?
That's right.
I reckon I'm going to go tomorrow. Who was the doctor again?
Anyway, staying on track. So that's okay. So Mrs. Benkovic, I think, was very convinced about the doctor's representations to her and underwent the facial surgery and was instantly, from day one, really unhappy with the result. She complained about a tightness around her lips and some wrinkles that hadn't been addressed, and also the post-operative care and management that she had a problem with as well. She went on on to sue in the New South Wales District Court, and she was awarded quite a lot of damages under 3 different categories: pain and suffering for the suffering she'd gone through with the face, also what we call exemplary damages, which are sort of like punitive damages. That's correct, because the doctor made all of these outlandish statements to her, and also some additional damages for the fact that he had a blatant disregard for the doctor-patient relationship.
Aggravated damages for humiliation and
That's
loss
correct.
of self-esteem.
That's
Nuncio,
right.
can I say, what did the court find? This was appealed.
Yeah, well, this was appealed to the New South Wales Court of Appeal, and what was really upheld was that the general damages component was upheld, so the $30,000 she was awarded for her pain and suffering, but the damages for both the aggravated damages and exemplary damages, they were set aside. So she was only left with the $30,000.
The $30,000 doesn't sound much for what this lady's gone through.
No, look, and when you talk about some legal fees as well, she's not going to be seeing much of it. So it's not a great result for her
Is that $30,000
personally.
because the jurisdiction there didn't permit a larger payout?
Oh, look, it is different from Victoria, the New South Wales. So I don't
What's the
think
Victorian?
well, it said that the cap is 371,000. So
much higher.
I think that she'd
Is it much higher, Alice? Possibly.
Possibly higher than in New South Wales, but I think also this is 1996 as well,
it's a
and the
long time
doctor
ago.
could have thought that, the court, I should say, could have thought that given that they were adding exemplary and aggravated damages to this case, her final award was something like 140,000 all up, which is a much higher sum.
Yeah.
Well-
But the general damages for pain and suffering were down at 30.
Well, the High Court placed a lot of reliance on Rogers and Whittaker.
That's
which
right.
is that famous case of the lady that lost the sight.
That's right, it's a seminal case. And what the Supreme Court of Appeal found was that the doctor had in fact failed to warn her of the relevant risks of the surgery, but he found that the doctor had not undertaken the surgery in a negligent manner, i.e. the surgery was done with all due care and skill, but it was the failure to warn that got this lady over the
That's
line.
correct.
And she's lucky in a way because the Supreme Court of Appeal was really quite harsh towards her. They knocked off her exemplary damages and also her aggravated damages.
Well, wouldn't she sue for misrepresentation, Nuncio, in contract, because then she would have got her aggravated damages and punitive
Well,
damages?
look, I think this is funny. If you read the Court of Appeal, I think they basically had a go at the lawyers saying, well, that's what you should have pleaded, because if you
It's
did...
misrepresentation.
If you did, you would have had a successful case in that regard.
That's right.
Look, I think the lesson learned from this case is twofold. One, ask the questions of the doctor, because what was found, if she asked those questions and got the answers, she wouldn't have undertaken that surgery. So that's one. And two, make sure, of this for doctors as well, you give the appropriate care. He ignored her for months, Tony. She was asking for further consultations and revision surgery, and he ignored it.
That's right.
And
doesn't
also,
work.
doctors, the important thing is you give them proper advice about the improvements you're going to make, because a lot of these people aren't going to look that younger.
No, that's
the reality
right.
is you're not going to be 20 years younger.
Look, we can't reverse the ageing process, Tony, but
No.
I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from this case. So it's a good thing to keep in mind.
Nuncio, Alice, I want to thank you for coming on board. I do want to thank Dr. Callis again. It's been sensational that he allowed us into his rooms, not to mention his surgery. Now, and apart from that, I'd like to thank the viewers for watching, and please stay tuned and stay safe. Thank you.